Hello and welcome back to Kimboshi Radio, where Nick, we have finally seen how this particular story ends, and I, for one, loved it. How are you feeling about it?
I mean, it was fantastic. I don't think it's a surprise that Terunofuji just really took it over this match.
Yeah, really exciting near the end there, and we'll talk about all these different things, but I did throw up a poll when we still had three in the running, Terunofuji, Kirishima, and Kotonowaka. And really, it was split relatively evenly down the middle between Terunofuji and Kotonowaka, but Kotonowaka, before the final match, actually did have the edge. I think people were still riding that this was his time. And in the end, we should stop doubting the man, because he rises from the grave again and again and again, but Terunofuji gets it done.
Yeah, and I think, so I had mentioned this, I think it was in the mid-tournament episode. It is so different versus for anybody else that's currently in the top division. When Terunofuji steps in the ring, like, you just feel it. And I think, so just to throw out some numbers, which are, I think, were interesting. So Kirishima is currently 0-10 against Terunofuji. Kotonowaka is 0-9. Hoshoryu is 0-10, with the last one being a Fusensho. So it's only Takakeisho who has ever won a match of all of the Ozeki against Terunofuji.
That stat line is absolutely bananas. Like, that's just bonkers.
Yeah, and which of course just makes it more of a bummer that Takakeisho is so injured.
Yeah.
But it just shows that they're, like, as much as everybody wanted to see Kirishima take the Yokozuna belt, there's just nobody who can currently compete with Terunofuji.
It's so true. Like, he by no means was Kakuryu in the same conversation as Hakuho, but you felt confident that he could beat him if it came down to it at the end of a tournament. And for that matter, even Terunofuji and Hakuho, in the one time, they both had that tournament where they were battling to see who was going to get the undefeated victory in Hakuho's last ever tournament. And it turns out to have been Hakuho, but at no time did you think that Terunofuji couldn't do it. So, we're talking about the baton passing traditionally, you've had someone prove that, hey, I really am 2 steps above everyone else in this division. I deserve to have this. And while we both really like Kirishima, at the end of the day, the thing that we feared with Kirishima did in fact happen here. He ended 11-4, 2 wins off the pace, and I love him. He's one of those guys who I'm willing to call him even an overqualified Ozeki because of the versatility of techniques with which he can win. I don't think the numbers necessarily back up that claim yet, but I do think he's really good. But at some point, you need the raw data to back it up, and it does not.
No, and I think he's doing well at Ozeki. I mean, his first basho, 6-7-2. He was injured. He, I believe, had a rib injury, so he's still recovering from that. But November was 13-2. Even here at 11-4 is good for Ozeki numbers.
Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. But again, like you said, he's just not quite at that level yet. Which again, four tournaments at Ozeki really isn't a whole lot. So I don't think that's unreasonable.
Right, and that's what I mean about the raw data. We just don't even have a sample size, so that's why I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on some of these things. But yeah, it's that kind of thing where, it's terrible logic to use or whatever, but you're like, I know a Yokozuna when I see one, and I don't see one right now. Not that, if Terunofuji were gone and we were going to sit in a room and ask who's the best person in the division, let's say that the rules, I believe there doesn't technically need to be a Yokozuna. But if let's say that the rules were such that someone has to be a Yokozuna, and we were all sitting around and one of these guys has to be Yokozuna. Maybe even probably it ends up being Kirishima. But that's not the case, and so when the idea is you need to be so dominant that you tower above everyone else, we just don't have that, except Terunofuji, who now at this point, I might be 180ing, it's the same thing. It's so funny. So after he won his Yusho in 2023, I personally was out there kind of hoping for that to be the ride off into the sunset and him to just retire. And at the time, I recall you making the argument that, no, I think How can he retire if he just won a Yusho? You can't leave if you just won one, especially when he's gone on record saying he wants to make it to double digits. Now I've totally flipped. I'm on your side. I'm like, well, if the division is not dominant and he just got this one and now he's only 1 win away from 10, like he's got to stick around, right? What do you think?
Oh, 100%. I think, of course, I was riding that high after May when he went 14-1. And then immediately afterward, he get that injury from Tobizaro. I was like, ooh, maybe I was kind of starting to go your way. I'm back to it, 100% back on it. I think this is just another basho that has shown that he's had to switch up his technique a little bit, which I think he did pretty successfully this basho. But there is nobody I think that can guarantee steal a Yusho away from him. And I think he could come back for another one, assuming that his knees he can stand up. And he can take another one easy.
I'm with you. It's one of those things where sumo is interesting because it has this meritocratic structure in that there's promotion and demotion. You can drop out of a division, you can drop up, you can go into Sanyaku, you can go up ranks. There are some of these requirements and things like that. But that is not to say that it is mathematically even. Like, I think the difference between Maegashira 7 and Maegashira 8 is 1 step on the ladder. I do not think that Komusubi to Sekiwake is 1 step, and I certainly don't think Ozeki to Yokozuna is 1 step. And I think that depends on the quality and caliber and health of the Yokozuna at present. But even with some of those factors not being in Terunofuji's favor, mainly health, it's 3 steps, 4 steps, like if that man were healthy, it's insane. Even though we know that the tail of his career is very short because the health won't last. Like, by the end of this, would you say he was at 75%, 80%, 60%? Like, not healthy regardless, and still came out on top.
No, I would put him at probably, like you said, like 70%. And clear at the beginning, he was kind of like shaking off some rust because he hadn't competed since July, and he barely did there, but oh my God, it wasn't even close.
That's a good point. Talking about rust and then the Wakamoto Haru loss pretty early in the basho, like, Wakamoto Haru is a friggin' freight train. That guy blasts into people like nobody's business, and when he started frog hopping Terunofuji, so where you end up putting concussive blows on your knees when they lift and drop, like you said, as far as rust, I don't know. I think that was... In retrospect, that's like to be expected. It's like, ooh, yeah, that was a bad matchup for the big man. But he eventually got to the point where maybe it's just even pain thresholds where he's like, okay, I know what that feels like now because it had been a year, like we were talking about. So it's like almost like that loss is excusable. I still have no idea what happened with the Shodai thing, other than the fact that like those two have fought each other a lot. So maybe it's just simply the factor of Shodai is not scared of him. He knows what to expect. But yeah, once the rust got shaken off, it looked good. Let's not bury this lead, though. Like, I do think the JSA softballed him in some sense because of how they stacked the matchups for him and where the matchups came in order to make sure he was in the running for those last 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. Specifically, like, don't get me wrong, he fought Onosho and Onosato when they were still doing good and then beat them. But the stretch where they, after the Shodai loss, where they gave him Ryuden, Nishikigi, Kinbozan, that's where I was like, all right, we're softballing here trying to get him to the end. However, once we got to the end, he just straight up beat Kotonowaka and Kirishima, who are the two guys of his caliber, definitely in terms of performance in that basho and also just overall in terms of careers. So, it's this thing where I'm like, okay, I guess you lose some points for the JSA softballing you with your matches, but all you can do is win the guys you win against the guys you fight, and he did that. And also, he still beat all the big guns. Now, he got a Fusensho against Hoshoryu. That's out of his control as well. And like you were saying, Hoshoryu's 0-9 against him in his career, and Hoshoryu wasn't healthy in this tournament either, obviously, with that right knee. So he probably would have gotten that too, which would have made it look even more impressive. It's like, he's not healthy, so some of these softballing things are happening, but he's still taking care of business. And honestly, that's probably kind of not necessarily a sneaky thing of the JSA. That's probably the way it works. You know what I mean? You want the Yokozuna in it at the end. So once we get a new era of Yokozunas, whenever that happens to come, I think they're going to get that kind of preferential treatment too.
So the softballing at the beginning, I think, really made sense for the first third. Hasn't fought in a while, needs some matches. Other than that, I honestly don't think he needed it. I mean, he clearly showed at the end that I don't, like I said, I don't know that he needed the softball treatment for the whole thing. The loss against Shodai, I think if you're one of the top people, you can never count Shodai out. He has been he's been fighting at a lower rank, but he's fought them a bunch of times. He knows what he's doing. He is the Lord of Chaos. You cannot count him. It's just like Abi. You cannot count those two out, or you're going to lose.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Abi, but like the bounce back he had in this tournament was incredibly impressive to me, for how he started and how he finished. But yeah, with Shodai, and we've talked about this a little bit before. He also fights a unique style that not many other Rikishi use, where he's a body grappler. Like, you wouldn't call him a Mawashi man. He's definitely not an Oshizumo pusher thruster guy. Like, he does want to grapple and throw and fight tactical battles, but it's so interesting that he doesn't use the Mawashi. He'll just grab your belly and then do it that way. So I think that can be something that kind of shakes it up for his opponents, just because it's something not that they don't know how to fight against it, but just you don't get the reps because no one uses that style but him. And I will say another thing, just like the fact that the Shodai loss came right after the Tobizaru victory, which was a Pyrrhic victory for sure. Tobizaru knows how to beat Terunofuji. It's so impressive to watch those two fight. But one of the ways that Tobizaru does it is he finds his spot and then goes for those hard leg sweeps. And he actually landed one of them very hard on Terunofuji. It didn't work, which is a testament to Terunofuji. But I think that knee was still sore when he got into the Shodai fight and he hadn't recovered and needed to get through that Shodai match, and then, frankly, to get through the Ryuden match, who was having a terrible basho, and use that time to kind of recover from the added pain Tobizaru threw into the equation.
I have a question, and this is completely, obviously, conjecture and just guesses on our part. Say, if Hoshoryu had not been injured, I 100% believe that Terunofuji would have beat him. Do you think Kotonowaka would have to make it a playoff?
Ooh, would Kotonowaka have gotten through Hoshoryu if is that the question, or what's the
Yeah, so if Hoshoryu had been healthy, he did not go Fusencho those last couple days.
Yep.
Terunofuji, again, I believe he would have beat him, but do you think Kotonowaka would have been able to beat him to make it a playoff, or do you think Terunofuji would have just won without it?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know? I'm going to look this up and see their overall record against each other, because I don't know. Holy smokes. Well, I'll say this. Their last 3 matches in a row, Kotonowaka has beaten Hoshoryu. But before that, Hoshoryu had won 8 straight. So, no! 10 straight. He had won 10 straight before losing 3 in a row. So I have no idea that information. Like, the last 3 basho in a row, Kotonowaka has beaten Hoshoryu, but Kotonowaka hadn't beaten Hoshoryu since September of 2020 before that.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, that's even just more testament to Kotonowaka that he's been able to take him on, especially with the last ones all being, I think, when he was either Sekiwaki or Ozeki, so that's awesome.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Those are just crazy numbers. I'm with you. I apologize that I cannot answer your question. Those in the audience, if you want to play revisionist history with us and let us know, because I have no idea. So I'd love to read some of your explanations for who and why a healthy Kotonowaka, a healthy Hoshoryu, what you guys think. But actually looking at those numbers throws so much confusion to me that I have no idea. But let's talk about that, because even though he didn't get the Yusho, the big boy has hoisted the big fish. He is an Ozeki now.
I'm so excited for him. Like, we've been talking about him for, I feel like, 2 years. Like, with super slow grind up. We're like, oh, he's really getting a ton of experience. They're taking it slow, and this is why I 100% believe they need to.
Yeah.
This is the results you get versus just rocketing somebody up from like 15 to 7 to 1.
Right. It's those added expectations and duties off of the dohyo in addition to on it. Like, it's so different. We'll use this as an example, a comparative example, but like Atami Fuji got blasted. We were hoping that wouldn't happen, but it did. Uda in his first trip to Komusubi got blasted. Like, and I'm not, Uda's been a slower rise up order, but just like, it's hard to fight the best guys every day. It's almost like the Sanyaku fights its own tournament every basho. You know what I mean? Like, they have their little tournament. It's like it's a different league on top of Makuuchi, where they all fight each other, and then, oh yeah, whichever Maigashiras happen to have cleaned up a lot of soft wins gets to come up and dance with us for the final few days. But more often than not, see Onosato, see Onosho, see, they get blasted. The Maigashiras who bounce up.
Yeah, even, I mean, Hakuoho did, Nishikafuji, all of them that have made it close to the end.
Yeah.
They can't compete with that, which again, it's great. They're at lower level, they're at lower experience. But I'm glad that Kotonowaka went the route that he did, where there's no doubt that he 100% earned it. Yep. But also, I guess we should be calling him his new name, which is Kotozakura, his grandfather's Yokozuna name.
I love it, yeah, because we were looking at, so he's been fighting in a family name, but as you've mentioned before on the pod, his dad only ever made it to Sekiwake, so he had already matched his dad, and now he has surpassed his dad, and he's just taken a look at his grandfather. He's already got his grandfather's name, and now the next step is to make it to Yokozuna like him.
Yes, and just some additional numbers there. His grandfather, actually, Kotonowaka beat getting to Ozeki by 1 year, and his grandfather took 6 years to get to Yokozuna at 32. I 100% believe that Kotonowaka can beat that as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially part of that is the way sumo looks right now, but also just like Kotonowaka's good. He physically has it all. He's great because we rip on Oho all the time because Oho also has that pedigree of coming from a grandfather who was a Yokozuna and things like that. But just like he's using it. They both have like the body and the pedigree, and Oho somehow just like doesn't use it. I loved on the last day 15, sort of actually it was kind of the last 3 days, the facial expression shift of Kotonowaka in his ring entering ceremony, just like the aggression and anger he was throwing into his face, much like what we usually see, like we talk about Hoshoryu's mean mugging, and you can make fun of that kind of stuff if you want, but like whatever you got to do to psych yourself up, man. And he's been doing it, so like that sort of mental edge, whether it's fully there, I don't know, but it's definitely developing.
No, I truly believe right now that it's going to be Hoshoryu and Kirishima are going to be the two next, like, real rising Yokozuna.
Yeah.
Not that Kirishima can't get it, but I think those two, they're much younger. They've gotten these ranks way younger. They're super skilled, and I think those two, are going to be big competitors over the next
I'm with you
years.
because I just feel like Hoshoryu has so much more room to grow. I'm not certain if Kirishima does. And even Kotonowaka, like, I don't know that he has that much more room to grow, but we're talking about that after a 13-2. You know what I mean? So I'm like, he's already grown pretty high. I'm not saying like, oh, he can't get better enough. I'm like, no, he's already pretty good.
Yeah, and he's 25 right now. So he's got years left to compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, Kirishima, it's weird. Kirishima's only a year older than Kotonowaka anyway. Hoshoryu's even younger yet. But I don't know. It just, I want to see him step it up. I hope he has that next gear, but it's the stuff we're talking about. Maybe some of this is recency bias because Kirishima's coming off of an 11, which is still great, and Kotonowaka's coming off of 13. We'll see in the future. They both got beaten by Terunofuji, so that's something, but I don't know. Very excited to see what happens here. So let's talk this. We now have 4 Ozekis: Kirishima, Hoshoryu, Takakeisho, Kotonowaka. If I told you had to pick one and could only pick one, who is a Yokozuna after January 2025 basho?
I really, truly wish with all of my heart that I could say Takakeisho. Like we pointed out, he's gone at least 4 and 6 recently with Terunofuji. I think he's the dominant one of the 4, but with his neck injury, I honestly would be surprised if he's here in the next few tournaments, to be honest with you. Like, and truthfully, I hope he retires simply because with his neck injury affecting his arm, like it's getting scary.
Yep.
And I hope he retires, and I don't want to see him get like his arm paralyzed because of this.
I know. I think it's more likely he's a Sekiwake in January if he's still fighting, and I don't want to see that. But like we just watched it with Tochinoshin. It was so hard to watch.
Yes, but with the other three, if you're talking Yokozuna, ooh, that's tough. I think I always hype up Kirishima, and I think at this point I'd still give him a slight edge. I think right now over Kotonowaka, simply because he's just got a little bit more at Ozeki. It'd be an easier route for him. Mm-hmm. Hoshoryu just can never quite put it together at the end, which is a bummer because he's so good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like I am dazzled by the current stars and want to pick Kotonowaka for it, but at the end of the day, I think I lean with you because Kirishima has won multiple Yusho. Kotonowaka's never won a Yusho. Hoshoryu's only won one Yusho. I think if we're trying to think with our heads, you have to say it's Kirishima, but at that point, I'm like, it's more likely we don't have Yokozuna, but I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I 100% agree. I don't think any of them are ready to ascend to that level yet.
Yeah.
So I think Terunofuji's just going to be kind of the ghost that comes back and just beats the hell out of everybody every once in a while.
Yeah, I know. It almost buys him more time to get his 10 because the JSA will feel like they need him, and because he's still proven that he is worth needing. But speaking of things we need and guys going up and down on the Bansuke, with Kotonowaka leaving Sekiwake, Daisho stays there. 9-6 is fine. Not as great as tournament and kind of disappointing after how well he was last year. But just like, we now have an empty Sekiwake slot and 2 empty Komosubis because Takayasu had to pull out after only getting 2 wins. Uda fought the whole basho but only managed a 6 and 9. But we already mentioned Atami Fuji got brutalized. Wakamoto Haru, who I think was set to fill one of those Komusubi slots, now at 10 and 5, he surely gets slotted into back into his old Sekiwake slot, I feel like. But it's a bloodbath in the M1 to M5, which is usually where guys get recruited to go into those spots. Nick, what are they going to do? We got 2 empty Komusubi slots, and I don't know if, by the numbers, nobody deserves to be there. What do you think is going to happen?
So I think this worked out really well for Wakamoto Haru because he is going to deservedly be back at Sekiwake.
Yeah.
He's just shown that that's the level he's at. He shouldn't be fighting at anything below that. Mm-hmm. So I think they have a safe route to put him back up there. Mm-hmm. But, man, Komusubi of Abi is at 8 and 7 at Megashira 2 is probably going to get one of those slots. But the next positive was Nishikigi at Megashira 5 with an 8-7. Ugh. I mean, he's going to get brutalized if he goes up there, but I think he's the only other option.
I know. It's that, or you and I've talked about it, like, it's that or you have to dip all the way to Asanoyama at M7, which personally I think is probably the most likely because he did go 9-3-3, so if the JSA want to live in a world where they imagine he won all or most of those 4 matches he missed with injury, then technically, mathematically, he could have gotten up there. He was contending for the Yusho, the basho, and he's obviously a former Ozeki, so you know he can bang if you put him at Komusubi. But part of me also feels like, and there's another thing, they had him in the last 2 days, he fought Atami Fuji and Daisho. So I think what those 2 fights were is the Atami Fuji one is that guy's an M1, right? So, okay, can you beat him? Do you deserve currently to be challenging for Sanyaku spots? Okay, he beat Atami Fuji, so the answer is yes. But then they had him fight Daisho, so then they're like, okay, you want a challenge for Sanyaku, can you beat a current Sanyaku? And he couldn't. And Daisho is the only Sanyaku he fought this entire basho, so that like hurts his case. I don't know. I'm with you. It has to be Abi, which is insane to go 8 and 7 from M2 and be like, yeah, lock for Komusubi. What? But it has to be him because of what happened all around him. And then it's just like Asanoyama. Asanoyama and Nishikigi. I don't know.
I think personally I'd give it to Nishikigi. He's 2 ahead. And like you said, I think it's kind of a big deal that he went against one Sanyaku and lost. Mm-hmm. He should be able to beat all these guys with his previous experience, his previous rank. But for some reason, and I know part of it was his score's a little lower because he did hurt his right ankle, had to be out for a few days. Mm-hmm. But I'm still at this point, I'm like, can he kind of hang with the Sanyaku at this point?
Yeah, and you know what? Now that you say that, like, okay, so Asanoyama did beat Nishikigi, which is a check against him, but Nishikigi fought a way tougher slate. Nishikigi, one of his losses is to Terunofuji, so he did fight the Yokozuna and lose, so I think that's a big deal. One of his losses was Wakamoto Haru, who had an awesome basho fighting spirit, or he got a special prize and got 10 wins, so like that's okay. And then he also beat Atami Fuji, but when he fought Daisho, he won. You know, so it's like one of those things like.
And he beat Tamawashi, who was the one who took out Asanoyama.
Yeah, and so you're probably right. It's probably going to be Nishikigi, and they'll slot Asanoyama in the high Maegashira's. Probably Maegashira won, and just because it was so brutal there. Other than that. Good stories around the basho. Like, happy to see Takakeisho finally put a double-digit win together. Maybe the last year really was an aberration because of his wounded knees, and that surgery is really going to make a difference for him. I hope that's the case because he has the best smile in sumo. Oho got 10 wins. I know we just ripped him, but it's because, like, he does this, man. He'll get double-digit wins and then flop. So, I don't know. I'd love to see him wake up and do something about it, but we'll see. Kotoshoho, a little rougher week 2 than week 1, but did finish 9-6 after his Juryo bounce back, which is good to see because that's a guy who had elite pedigree before his injury, so I'd love to see him do well. And Onosho, really brutal run there when they had him fight against the top rankers. He had to fight in 4 straight days. Kirishima, Terunofuji, Kotonowaka, Wakamoto Haru, lost all of them. And the only one of those guys who wasn't Sanyaku was Wakamoto Haru, but you and I have just talked about how that dude is easily Sekiwake grade. So, like, Onosho got brutalized there, but 10 wins is still great. He's another guy I could see them jetpacking higher than his numbers deserve, but just because of this weird tournament. And then the last one I did want to mention is Onosato, who, again, brutalized in 3 straight matches, loses to Kotonowaka, Hoshoryu, Terunofuji, but then finishes out with 3 straight wins, including a win against Takakeisho, who was, like we said, having a really great tournament, so that's impressive. This is just, like we said, Onosato, I want to see get the slow burn up. I want to see him only go to M7 or M8 and get a few more chances against these top rankers, see how he can get up there, because the guy is going to be great. I hope it's Yokozuna. Maybe it's Ozeki. I kind of doubt that his career caps out at Sekiwake, but we'll find out. Of those guys that I just rattled off real fast, those are just like our double-digit winners, and I threw Kotoshoho in there for fun. Is there any one of those guys that you expect to kick on, considering they're probably all going to get over-promoted because of what happened to the wrestlers above them?
So I do think, just to touch on, like you said, their last few days for Onosho and Onosato, it felt a little bit like, I don't know if it was the JSA testing those two or if they were just like, we don't want you in the end, because those fights straight through, they had no chance in hell of winning all those.
Back to back, yeah.
Brutalized.
Right. Or if they had won all those, then at that point you're talking about these two guys being prodigy savants. That's a great point. I didn't think about it that way.
But I think it's kind of a bummer, but I think Onosho is just kind of showing, like you've said, he will really turn it on, get 10-5, but we'll see how he does in the upper level. I don't really have anything for Onosato to say either way, to be honest. Like, I don't think I have enough data on him. I think, like you said, I've got a good gut impression that he's going to do really well, but I'm curious to see, like, is he ready for even the mids at this point?
I think so too. He lost 2 Onoshos, his only other loss to a non-Sanyaku, and so that's a guy who had a good tournament and is good. But, like, still, it's just that idea, like you said, he's untested, and it's not that. I think he can learn and adapt to anyone and anything that's going to be thrown at him, but I think he still needs to do it. I think in sumo, it's really hard to learn how to beat top rankers when you haven't fought top rankers, so I think he just has to learn it. You know what I mean? Like, Nick, I have full confidence that you could learn Spanish and become fluent in Spanish. But if you never take a Spanish lesson, you're not going to learn Spanish.
Exactly.
So it's like, I think Onosato needs to go to school here. And then Onosho, I'm with you. Like, I friggin' love that guy, but he's one of these guys who, it's a little bit heartbreaking for me personally because, like we've talked about with Abi, we've talked about with a lot of guys, he is one-dimensional. He does not fight on a Mawashi. and his Oshizumo is superb. Probably one of the 5 best in the division, I think. And that's impressive because we're throwing in guys like Daisho and Wakamoto Haru with him. But he can get Matador Olayed sometimes, and then you're just like, ugh, it's so deflating when it happens, you know?
Yes. Another one I did want to touch on is I think we mentioned it briefly, but Terunofuji, it's kind of a bummer to see him go 6'9", but just on a positive note, I'm actually not. I think I was expecting him to get 7. I want to say I said that beforehand. I can't remember if I said it out loud or if I just said it to you. But I actually don't think that's terrible, considering, again, the level of experience he had and then who he started right off the bat. Hoshoryu, Takakeisho, Kirishima, Kotonowaka. I'm like, those are...
Yep. And then fought Tobizaru, a former recent Komusubi, and fought Daisho, a current Sekiwake. Like, they brutalized him for 6 days in a row, an entire week. That was madness. You're totally right. I'm glad you brought that up.
So I really don't think a 6'9". As soon as I saw him up there, I was like, yeah, 7. Because I think there's some ones that he could have won. But he beat Daisho, he beat Abi, he beat Shodai. Like he beat some really skilled people, so he'll take a bump down.
Yeah.
But I still think that shows how much promise he has, that he was even able to hang this hard.
Yeah.
A lot of people who have gotten this, they've dropped back down to like just terrible ranks, and not all of them. Clearly, most of them haven't recovered.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a great point. We still expect massive things from Terunofuji. He's going to be great. Same thing as with Onosato. Like, they're trying to learn Spanish, you know? Here we go. You don't just learn Spanish at Taco Bell. You got to do something else. So I think that's really impressive. How about before we shift to the lower divisions and get out of here? Are there any of the guys like? First of all, we're going to lose a lot of guys, or we're not going to lose as many as we should, like what happened a couple tournaments ago. Like, it's weird. This tournament was weird. Like, basically, several fighters took all the oxygen out of the room. I'm just going to throw some names out there, and you can add any more if you want, but there's a chance, I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a chance we lose Endo, which is crazy because that guy has massive pedigree. We're probably going to lose Takarafuji, which is disappointing because he has the sexiest legs in the division. Bushozan, I feel for the guy because he's such a yo-yo. It's like how we talk about a division is not just one step up. Sometimes it's a step and a half. Like Bushozan, Kagayaki, those are two guys who, like, you see him in Juryo and you're like, yeah, they're too good for this. And then they get to Makuuchi and you're like, ugh. And then Aoyama, no wins, injured and pulled out. Like, I don't know. Is there anyone that we're losing that you particularly wanted to talk about, or any stories you wanted to cover there?
Like you said, it's such a bummer to lose Takarafuji. I'm kind of curious personally. Do you think Aoyama ever comes back?
I know.
Or do you think this was his attempt at retirement at the Makuuchi, and then it just, he got injured and things weren't.
Yeah.
Not that the injury is really what tanked him. Like, if we're being honest, he was clearly not doing well before that, but I don't know if he's going to come back.
I know. That's my thing too. Like, I don't know. Here's the thing. The next tournament will tell us. If he fights in the next basho, then I expect him to not retire until he drops to Makushita, like Azumaryu did. Because Juryo is still the salaried ranks, frankly, you can squeeze money out of it for a little longer to make just a wise choice. Like, sometimes there's life beyond sumo, and you just need to pay attention to that. But unlike Azumaryu, who I don't think will have the same opportunities to go into coaching or to potentially become an oyakata, Aoyama has those opportunities, so he might just decide it's not worth it to do this to my body and leave. So unfortunately, like, unsatisfactorily, I don't have an answer for you except to say, like, if he fights the next Juryo tournament, I think we see him for another year, but he never makes it back to Makuuchi. I think he stays in Juryo. If this injury is bad enough that he has to miss the next tournament, then I think he rides it out for as long as he can cash the Juryo paychecks and then retires.
Yep, I think that makes sense. I guess I don't even know how extensive the injury is, so that truly that'll make a big difference.
Yeah. And I just
with Juryo. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I would tell people to keep an eye on, like, Sumo Prime Time, like that YouTube channel, stuff like that. Like, if he's getting closer, you'll probably see him with Hiro or whatever. Like, you'll get some insight probably if he's talking to them and doing some social media spots. That might be a pivot in his career.
But then Juryo, the one who I keep hyping up, despite what the record may or may not say, Nishikafuji is very likely coming back. 10-5 at Juryo 2. I'm so excited.
I think he's got to be a lock. Like, it's interesting in Juryo because we had so many high Juryo rankers doing so well early in the basho, but they kind of laid an egg the second week and stuff like that. Mitoryu and Dayamami both fell out of it. Nishikifuji is the one who kept it going despite some losses. Roga technically has a record that he could go up, but I don't think he deserves it. After how he finished the basho, it was really unimpressive to me. Kotonowaka, I guess, maybe bounces back up. He looked really impressive in spurts, but from J3 at 10-5, it's a little harder. It's just not guaranteed. Toki Hayate, I think, blew it because he's down at J6 and went 10-5. But the one I'm really interested in is those two losses for Takeru Fuji to Roga and Kotonowaka. Is 13-2 and the jun-yusho enough to get him up when he was fighting all the way at Juryo 10 in his first ever attempt at Juryo? Like, my brain tells me no, they're going to log jam him at J1, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Let's see this guy at Makuuchi. He's another one-dimensional guy like Onosho, but the north-south ferocity he comes... I have not seen anyone crash in a Tachi as ferociously as him. It's Wakamoto Haru-esque.
I think it's going to be really close. Like you said, he's got the edge clearly with a 13-2 and a win, but it's like there's so many people who weirdly got higher with a bunch of 10-5s above him that I think... So it's kind of bad luck. And with, as we pointed out before, the bottom of Makuuchi did shockingly well this time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there'll be enough space even for him.
Right. We're going to be in the situation where maybe one we didn't talk about in Makuuchi, but Hokuseiho was doing absolutely awful and then pulled out with an injury. Like, technically, by the numbers, because he was 2-4-9, if you call that 2-13, that's an 11 rank demotion from M8. That should put him in Juryo. I don't think they will, because I don't think you drop a guy from M8 to Juryo. That seems brutal. But if they do, like that's like you're talking about, that's the kind of scenario where I could see it. I'm like, okay, if they're going to make the aggressive move where they drop Hokuseiho back to Juryo, I could see that opening the door for them to make an equally and opposite aggressive move of bringing Takeru Fuji up. If not, then I think both those guys stay in their respective divisions, but way closer to each other, where they're like M17 and J1, and then the JSA at some point probably even has them fight each other if they get the opportunity to see, like, hey, which one of you deserves to be in the top?
Yeah, and which is... So one interesting thing that I just picked up on, a little fun fact. So this will be... Terunofuji, Atami Fuji, Midori Fuji, and Nishiki Fuji all the same and back in Makuuchi, all four together for the first time, I believe.
Nice. Yeah, because just like there have been times where one of them is bouncing down, bouncing up. Atami Fuji has had a down and up. Midori Fuji took a while to come back up. But yeah, Isegahama Beya, like, this is their time. I don't know exactly what's going to happen when Terunofuji's gone, like if they're going to... keep going at this level. I think it really depends on Atami Fuji. But yeah, they're a stacked stable right now.
Yeah, I mean, the money and the skill that they're bringing in, I think is just really a good chance for them to show off, and I hope they capitalize on it.
Yeah, me too. But you never know. I mean, first of all, they've got a lot of good talent coming up too. Satoru Fuji had a really bad basho in Makushita, but I think that's a guy who I still expect big things from coming in the future. But there are always other Beya who are kind of pushing to come back up. For instance, even some of them being new Oyakatas, like the former Hakuho, now the Miyagino stable. Hakuoho went 6-1, so he's probably... Well, no, actually, they just announced it yesterday, I believe, on social media. Hakuoho is coming back to Juryo, so that's going on. Although I will say 7-0, Wakataka Kage did get Makushita done, so he's coming back to Juryo. That climb is continuing. He's going to be back in Makuuchi. We just have to wait for it. But that's another exciting one. And then, obviously, Satoru Fuji, who I talked about, a little rough one, but won his last two matches to finish 3-4, so he'll dip just a little bit and maybe have a chance to come up. That's another Isegahama guy. But Hakuoho, and then the other guys coming up are Tsushimi Nada and Kita Harima, who are kind of retreads in Juryo. So, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. I'm just not as excited about those particular ones. And then in other places, so the lower down in Sandanmei, Fujisei, oh man, I have to say this one slowly. Fujiseun, there we go, did get 7-0 and wrap up Sandanmei, so obviously he's coming up. My boy Tanji did not get it, but from Sandanmei 1, he finished 6-1, so he's definitely coming up, and he's the guy I kind of have my eyes on more. Wakatakamoto struggled a little bit, finished 5-2, but he's probably coming up as well because of how highly, I mean, not probably, he is coming back up. So that's impressive, but some good stuff going on down there. And then in Jonidan, our boy not only went 7-0, but then also won the playoff to really finish it off. So our new Ukrainian Eastern European dream, Aonishiki, the ride continues. The pride of Ajigawa Beya, still pushing his way up. He was Jonidan 10, so like he's definitely going to Sandanmei, and I think he's probably going to go to high Sandanmeis. I think they're going to give him another massive boost like they did when he was in Jonokuchi. And then Anhibiki, who like I'll just be completely honest. I know almost nothing about this guy because he's either 18 or 19, but what I know is he's from Aomori, which is a sumo hotbed traditionally, less so in modern days, but so it would actually be cool to see an Aomori fighter really kind of reclaim that throne. But he's another exciting one. So, it's always going. We got these exciting things coming up as well. Anyone in particular you're excited about down the pike here as we watch the development over the next year, Nick?
So one thing I just want to quick say is I kind of feel bad for Juryo for the next couple basho.
Uh-huh.
With Hakuoho and Wakataka Kage coming back, and like they are going to be fighting. They're not going to accept a loss because they want back up in Makuuchi, and just I'm sorry for anybody who gets in their way.
You're totally right. Guys that a lot of people, so like Shishi is someone that a lot of the English speaking sumo world has grafted onto. He's another Ukrainian, so it's a good story and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the kind of guy that I'm like, uh-oh, this is about to be big. If Takerufuji doesn't get to go up this time, then like you said, 13-2 might not be possible. It might be 11-4, which is again still going to be enough to get him up to Makuuchi, but like it might be good that Takerufuji got his Yusho now because he's about to take a lot more brutal beatings from these really skilled wrestlers. Yeah, you're right. Our boy Asakoryu, the former Ishizaki, the little muscle man, the future Ishiura. Ugh, if it went 8-7 this time, might get a lot harder when he has to fight Hakuoho and Wakataka Kage.
Yeah, it's going to be... I think it's going to be a good learning experience, I guess, for everybody who's kind of in that like mid to a slightly upper range. But,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Either way, like, that's going to be... we love that. We love when Juryo's competitive. We love the stories rising up. We got a lot of young guys. Never know who's going to make it and who's going to fall short. But I loved this basho. We didn't get a new Yokozuna, but we had a chance for it all the way near the end. We thought we lost our chance for a new Ozeki, but we got it anyway. And we did get another victory and perhaps the motivating factor for a continuation of our Yokozuna's career as he chases 10 or hopefully 11, maybe get himself a little higher on that all-time list. So hey, of the storylines we were talking about late, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Terunofuji, I'm going to go wild and say, I think he can beat 10. I think he can go higher.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Big Teru. I can't wait for the next basho. We'll talk to you all soon, but thanks for listening.